Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy.
Okay, so today we're going to go through the murder of Sheila Blackthorn Bellush. She was murdered November 7th, 1997, and she was 35 years old. Now, just to give you a little background on Sheila, she was born October 19th, 1962 in Kansas. She was the fifth child in her family, and her youngest sister, Carrie, would be her best friend. Sheila's a petite person. She'll grow to being 5 foot tall and 90 pounds with long blonde hair and blue eyes. She was small but athletic and both stubborn, is how her parents would describe her. For a while, she grew up on a peach orchard in Arizona, and her dad was an architect. And then
I would love to grow up on a peach orchard. It would. You can laugh at me. It's true though.
Yeah. It was probably pretty. I didn't realize peaches grew in Arizona. I thought it was a Alabama, Georgia thing, but interesting that they can grow over there as well.
And in Virginia.
Peaches?
Yeah.
There's peach farms?
So there's apple orchards that also have peach trees, yes.
Huh.
And it attracts lots of bears. They always sell out in July. The first week that they open, the very first day, they're always sold out. We always try to go do it, and we always miss it. It's just, ugh.
Huh.
Anyhow, continue. Sorry, Sheila.
So her dad ends up getting a job in Oregon. And it says during Sheila's high school years that they move to the West Coast. She ends up graduating high school and finds a job with a criminal defense law office. And her coworkers describe her as having a strong work ethic, and everybody generally loved her. This is where Sheila meets her husband, or her first husband, Alan, or soon-to-be husband, rather. Now, mind you, she's barely out of high school when she meets him, and he's 27 years old. Alan dresses impeccably. He stands 6 feet 2 inches tall and is described by everybody as being handsome. He naturally gets her swooning over him because he knows where all the great places to go. He's suave, he's funny, he's loving. He just seems like the person of
Perfect.
dreams kind of thing.
Yeah. I feel like it's also easy when you're young because you don't really know what you're looking for in a partner.
Yeah.
So you get caught up in the superficial stuff.
Not to say age gaps are an issue, but she's barely out of high school and he's 27 years old. And now Sheila doesn't know that he's going through his second divorce at the time, but that's what brings him to the law office that Sheila works at. She just knew he was going through a divorce, not necessarily the second one.
The second, yeah.
So also Alan owns a stereo store, and between all everywhere, him knowing where to go and says all the right things, and owning that stereo store, it impresses Sheila. But Alan will kind of pawn off a way of avoiding talking about his divorce with Sheila by saying he doesn't want to dwell in the past. Which, I mean, I guess when you're young, it's just one of those, okay, he doesn't want to talk about it. So they don't.
Did he have kids?
We'll get there. Now, a little bit about Alan. Alan was born William Allen Van Hoot and later renames himself as most conmen do. And that's what Alan. I'm just going to spoiler alert. Alan's a piece of shit. We don't like Alan.
All right. Fuck you, Alan.
There we go. Now, Alan's father, Guy, left his 16-year-old mother, and Alan had to end up being raised by the grandparents. So you got that? That made sense. Guy's dad, I believe he was 19, and he got a 16-year-old pregnant, and then just beat feet. Yeah. which made it so the 16-year-old, obviously, she's pregnant and has to basically go move in with family. And now Guy, which is Alan's dad, only ever sees him the one time when he's an infant, and then from then on, he doesn't reappear in Alan's life until he's an adult. So
He's a winner.
and it's interesting because Alan's dad, Guy, was poorly raised, and his dad kind of did the same thing. So it's an interesting pattern to see of Guy did not grow up with a dad. So then he wasn't really necessarily a family man, didn't see the importance of it. So he too just skedaddled.
Wow. World-class guy.
Yeah. Now, Alan's mom, Karen, would always tell Alan that he ruined her life and he's the reason his dad left. And she would randomly abuse him throughout his childhood. So it was
Not to get
basic.
not to get sidetracked, but there's so many of these guys that end up killing somebody and their childhood starts off so jacked up. Like
Yes.
there's a case that I was reading last night and it's the same thing. Mom abusing the little boy, blaming him for stuff that's out of his control and physically abusing. It creates monsters. Don't abuse your kids, guys.
Yeah. Or anyone for that matter.
Well,
Keep your
yeah, or
hands to yourself.
and
And
you're not nice words.
yes. And generally be a supportive person. Anywho, so now Alan's dad abandons a total of 5 children prior to his third marriage, but he doesn't tell his third wife of this prior to them getting married or that the 5 children existed.
Hmm,
Alan is one of them. So
okay.
at 15 years old, Alan hitchhikes from his mother Karen's home to his grandparents' home, which is roughly 300 miles. Because at that
Wait,
point, I think
his crazy abusive mom is named Karen.
I did laugh at that one because she's like the original Karen.
Karen OG. Woo-hoo.
So I think it's one of those at 15 years old, Alan's just tired of it. So
And
he
rightfully so.
goes, yeah, he hitchhikes the 300 miles to get to his grandparents' home. And naturally, when they hear the stories of abuse by his mother, they take him in.
Well, that's
And
good.
and now, when I say Karen was abusive to Alan, she would hit him with basically anything that she could pick up that was nearest to her. So it's just like she's a quality piece of shit. So Alan was left to be raised by his grandparents, and now, given the grandparents had apprehensions of raising Alan early on because he saw how manipulative he was at an early age, not to say that that's a reason to have kind of been blind to what Karen was doing, but that was their apprehension. But then when Alan just showed up, they weren't going to turn him away. But that's one reason why they'll say later on they didn't intervene because I don't want to say they were afraid of Alan, but there was something off.
Okay.
Now, both Karen and Guy, which are Alan's parents, will go on to marry and divorce several people, having children out of each one of those relationships, and they both kind of forget about Alan. Um, Alan lives with his grandparents for about a year, and then he decides to go look for his dad and meets up with him and wants to move in with him, which that forces Guy to tell his then wife Susan about Alan because you figure he married her and she didn't know that he had kids prior to them getting married. So I would imagine that already drives a wedge between Guy and Susan.
Yeah. That's one hell of a bomb to drop on your significant other. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, honey, I have a teenager.
Yeah. So so Alan does move in because how can you just be like he can't? Because he'll tell Guy he has nowhere else to go, which is not necessarily true. But I feel like since Guy kind of grows up by this point, he feels like he needs to do right by his son at some way because this is 15, 16 years later and he hasn't been a part of his life at all. So
Yeah.
a little while after Alan moves in, Susan's underwear starts to disappear, and Susan will say she's afraid of Alan because I don't know, he's just got that factor of he makes her uncomfortable, and then you pair in the whole underwear disappearing.
Yeah. Follow your gut.
Yeah.
Don't become a lampshade.
So they have boys that are obviously younger than Alan, since Alan's the first boy that guy had. But so there's siblings in the house, or half siblings rather. Now Alan will come up with all sorts of weird games to play with his siblings, and one of them, he would tie them up and give them a tennis racket, and then whip them with a fishing line with hooks attached.
Oh God.
Now, that seems like a weird ass game, but the object would be to ward off the hooks before they latched into your skin. And this was just one of the many games Alan would come up that were sick. Now, mind you, the parents did not know this was going on. They just figured, boys are
Um,
upstairs playing.
Yeah, I mean, I get that because we did some crazy stuff growing up.
Yeah, there's the
Stick you in a
whole
box and push you down the stairs, take a
or
ride in the
inside the
dryer.
dryer. Yeah.
Yeah, fun
But
stuff.
I don't feel like I'd be on board with, yeah, put that fishing line, put a hook on it, and you try to hit me with it, and I'll try to ward it off. That
Well,
seems like
I
a
don't know. I don't understand how they warded it off if he tied them up.
well, the way I pictured it was you're strapped, and then you can't really move, kind of like not straight jacket style, but maybe your hands are to your front, and you're tied with the racket to your hands, so you can't really move your arms, but you got to move your whole body.
Gotcha. So I was picturing something similar, hands behind the back and the racket under the armpit.
That must have been like the competition round, or the championship round rather.
Like you can't see me right now, but I'm definitely shimmying my shoulders.
Yeah. But so that was just one of the many games that they would come up with. But his step siblings would say that they also feared him, so it was easier to go
Duh.
along. Yeah, it was easier to go along with whatever he came up with than it was to try to cross Alan.
I mean, if you told me that you wanted to play with me, Claire, when we were growing up, and your idea of a game was to try to hook me with a fishing hook, I would be, and that was when you were happy. I can only imagine if I pissed you off.
Yes.
So,
And then the next game will be we'll put matches out on each other. Yay. So on occasion, Alan, I mean, I think he kind of sensed that he was intimidating to both his siblings and Susan, because on occasions he would just randomly go up to Susan and tell her he's going to break her and Guy up. Which, what do you say back to that shit? And then if somebody just says it and then walks off, it's like, right. So I feel like just Alan's presence put tension between that relationship, because she didn't even know he existed. And then I feel like Guy would probably make up excuses or say she, is making it up, is what I would guess is going on here.
but you would
Um,
hope, but like you would think that their marriage is tight enough that even though he
eh,
he didn't hear it, that he now has more of a relationship, or should, with his wife than he does with his son, as sad as it is to say. But like you would think that he would trust his wife. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like it would be a weird thing to have happen, of just some teenage boy show up on your door and you didn't know he existed, and then your significant other drop the bomb of, "Oh yeah, didn't I tell you? You're not my first wife, you're my third, and I have kids from other relationships that I just abandoned, but I picked you and I stayed." That'd be like, "Right, but were you ever planning to tell me, or now you're
Yeah,
just telling me truths out of necessity?"
yeah.
So that's where I feel that relationship was kind of on thin ice. So Alan would be successful in driving a wedge between the two of them, and they eventually do go their separate ways. Now, during high school, Alan gets a job in a clothing store, so he was able to be well dressed and carry himself as a successful businessman, even though he's obviously not. Now, Alan moves out as soon as Guy and Susan divorce, which is kind of fucked up. He gets what he wants, and then it's just like, beats
He's
feet.
done. Yeah, he's done. He did
Yeah.
what he came for.
Yeah. So, but he stays within the same town. And now, given Alan has been there long enough that everybody in the town kind of knows Alan's weird and he's a bit on the dangerous side. Now, it's only the newcomers who don't uh, know him initially, like Alan, because he's basically a baby con man. So
Yeah.
he would seek out the young, insecure girls that were easy to manipulate. And that brings in Alan's first wife, Ellen. Alan is 19 years old when they first get married, and he's immediately abusive towards Ellen. Um, when she gets pregnant and gives birth to their first child, he forces her to give the baby up for adoption.
What the heck?
Now, I don't know how old Ellen is, but I imagine since he goes for the younger ladies, that I would imagine she's not, if even 18, she's not much younger than Alan. But anywho, I don't know how you stick with somebody who does that, but they stay together, and then she ends up pregnant again. Alan's livid and kicks her repeatedly and causes her to have a miscarriage.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So if that wasn't enough, that Alan's stepbrothers would say that when they visited Alan one time, he wanted them to watch him and Ellen have sex. And obviously they weren't into that. So it was like no, but
Was she?
no, but it was like she was afraid of Alan. And I think she was in a stuck situation.
I'm guessing that his stepbrothers probably, or half brothers probably figured the uncomfort or sensed the uncomfortability of her.
Yeah. Well, and they never really were comfortable with Alan. I think it was just trying to maintain a relationship because that's their half brother. But I think just knowing that they were intimidated by him when they were younger, that everybody knows he's weird and there's something off about him. But it's like what do you do about it? It's a family member. Now, at one point, Alan will convince Ellen um, that they can go out of town and leave their little new German Shepherd puppy in their apartment while they're gone for the weekend.
Huh.
Naturally, when they return, the dog has destroyed the apartment and defecated from one end to the other. Alan flies into a rage and proceeds to beat the shit out of this poor puppy until it
Oh.
dies.
Oh my gosh.
Now, shortly after this, Ellen divorces Alan and goes into hiding because I think at that point, she was the one taking the beatings, but I think when he beat a puppy to death, I feel like she saw that could be her.
She saw the monster he was. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
She's
uh,
lucky, as messed up as it is, she's lucky that they didn't actually have kids to raise together.
yeah. Well, so naturally that scares the shit out of her. She goes into hiding.
Oh yeah.
But they're divorced. And then 3 years later, now fast forward to 1981, Alan opens his first stereo store and marries his second wife. Now, when they get married, the abuse immediately starts, and it'll take her 3 years to get away from him. And it's during that divorce when he meets Sheila. And now, then when Sheila introduces Alan to her parents, they too are blown away by how suave Alan is and are just genuinely impressed by him and sympathize with him for losing whatever he claims he lost in the divorce. Um, Now, Alan will also claim that he has a degree from Stanford University, which he does not. And he'll propose to Sheila uh, he'll propose to Sheila's parents in becoming investors in his stereo business. Now, the way he's going to spin it is that he'll tell them that if they invest and only buy in for 48%, they won't be responsible for if there's any If the business takes a dive or anything, they won't be accountable for any of the debt or anything, but they'll make the profit. So it's like a win-win for them. So
That's
they'll
not smart business because that's not how it
no,
works.
but it's one of those, they're young, they're not young, but they're naive. They think he's saying all the right things. They're trying to get him on his feet because this is potentially Sheila's future husband. So they want to see him succeed, and then that way they can have a great life together. The whole, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is thing should have been said to them, but con
Yeah,
people are good at what they do for a reason.
yeah.
So they'll take out a loan against their house and give that
Ouch.
to Alan.
Ouch.
Yep.
They loved their daughter. They wanted her to be happy and supported.
Yeah. So in 1982, which is about a year later, Alan and Sheila get married. And as soon as Alan, well, naturally, they get married as soon as his second divorce is finalized. And then they move in with Sheila and her family. Now, Carrie, the younger sister to Sheila, will say she never liked Alan, but she's only 14 years old, so no one really takes her seriously. Now, the stereo equipment store was not doing so good, but Alan will hide this from Sheila's parents as the majority investors. Alan would move money around to make it seem like the stereo store was making money, so Sheila's parents wouldn't ask questions. Now, during this whole thing, that Alan will steal and duplicate Sheila's dad's driver's license and start transferring all of his assets into Alan's name. He even tries to sell Sheila's dad's van, and then he'll take out loans in which is what he would provide to Sheila's parents. So it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing, that he'd take out these loans and then give it to Sheila's parents, making it seem like the store is doing amazing. But Sheila's parents inevitably find out that he's not only stolen their identity, but he has ruined their credit. Now, Alan, his response when they confront him, he's just like, oh, well, just file bankruptcy. And they're just kind of like, that's all you
What the
have to
heck?
say? Like, are you fucking kidding? Now, Alan will explain to Sheila that Sheila's parents are the reason for the store's failure. And I guess being newlyweds, she just thinks the sun shines from his ass and buys it. So this will cause Sheila and her parents to be estranged during this point of her life. So she's kind of already driving a wedge between her family. So now it's just her and Alan kind of scenario. And
Oh boy.
on the night of September 8th in 1983, about 6 months into their marriage, Alan and Sheila are driving on I-205 South. Now, Alan's already speeding when he's passed by a man on a Harley and a woman hugging his waist. Alan, never liking to lose anything in his life, even though this is not a race, he gets upset because he's being passed and starts to speed up and pursue the biker. And he'll act like he's going to swerve in front of him and cut him off. And Sheila's begging Alan to just let it go. So when Alan speeds up, he kind of dings the bumper of the Harley and kills the man instantly.
Oh gosh.
The woman flies off onto the front end of their car, it rolls all the way up over the hood, and hangs on to the back of the trunk.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she hangs there for a little while before letting go and rolling off somewhere into the bank. Now, I do not know if she survived or not. I feel like she didn't because there's no account of her version.
That's
But mind you, the guy dies instantly.
that's
Now,
terrifying.
Now, Alan drives to a payphone, and instead of calling 911, he calls his dad, Guy. Now, Guy tells him to tell the police the Hells Angels pulled up, and he was just protecting his wife. Now, Alan was arrested, but then when it goes to trial, the jury can't render a verdict, and the charges are eventually dismissed. Now, Sheila knows the truth, But at this point, she's afraid of Alan, and the more he tells the story, the more she begins to believe it herself. Now, during this time, Sheila is pregnant. So it's
Oh
just like
no.
one of those, did it really happen the way she thought? And the more she hears it, the more you kind of want to believe that side of it. Again, she's young, she's naive, and it's easier to believe that you're embellishing things rather than look at it at face value.
Yeah.
So when
Uh,
Sheila has her baby, that she's under a year old, she's named Stevie Nicks.
wait, she?
Yeah, Sheila has the baby. It'd be weird if Alan did.
No, they had a girl?
They did. They had a little girl. Her name's Stevie. Now they decide, screw this place. Let's get away from it all. Let's move to Hawaii. So Alan changes his name to Blackthorn and they move on to Hawaii. He also applies for a new social security number because naturally, if you've pissed away your credit, you just start from square one.
I didn't know you could do that.
But, well, I would imagine it's one of those. Have you ever heard somebody say no credit or bad credit's better than no credit?
Yeah.
I would imagine starting over with a new social security number, it'd be very hard because you've got no history. So
Yeah, but I didn't even know that you could request a new social security number.
I I don't know. I'm not a con man.
I'm not a doctor.
Now, all the while they're getting money by selling off like stereo equipment and everything from the store. Now, the shitty part of all of this is at no point do they provide money to Sheila's parents for that. So, meanwhile, while all this is going on, Sheila's parents are attempting to recuperate their losses. So it's just like it's pretty shitty that they're deciding to move to Hawaii and sell some radio stuff that you would think if the stereo equipment store went under, sell it, split it, but they don't. So I don't even understand how they could ever have a relationship after that because it's a lot
Yeah,
of
they screwed her
fuckery.
parents. Yeah, they screwed her parents over big time.
Yeah. So Carrie graduates high school and decides she wants to go visit Sheila in Hawaii. Now, when she arrives, Sheila is pregnant with her second child, but she notices her sister looks like shit. She's covered in bruises, she's skinny, and she just looks exhausted. Now, while she's visiting, she also witnesses several occasions where Alan will verbally abuse her, and Carrie makes a joke that if he's not nicer to her sister, Sheila might leave. And Alan just coolly replies that he'd kill her first.
Oh gosh.
So it's just like, okay, that's weird.
It's
Now,
not funny.
when Carrie gets to Hawaii, the apartment is crowded. Alan's dad and brother are living with them because Alan, during one of his exploits, he finds an electronic device in Japan and wants Guy to help fine tune the product because Guy has a background in electronics. So he moves them into their little apartment to try to help get a business off the ground. Now, the device he discovers is a muscle simulator, so it makes your muscles contract involuntarily. Now, Alan's big plan is to sell the machine as a workout tool so you can get buff without actually working out. Alan actually goes to the bank and gets a loan for $160,000 to purchase the product. Now, he swans in there lying about his success, lying about his educational background, and actually gets the loan because you
Good
figure
Lord.
he's a great con man. He dresses the part. He can
I guess
really, he speaks bullshit fluently.
I guess the paperwork wasn't really up to snuff on all that.
I know, because $160,000.
You think they'd
I
want to
don't.
see tax returns and
So the only
like
thing I
profit
can,
loss?
yeah, the only thing I can figure is when he brought in whatever information he had regarding the electronic device, somebody else got excited at the prospect of you. Again, you get buff without actually doing anything. Is that not like the dream? You can have a chiseled body, burn some calories, and just be binge watching some Netflix. Not that Netflix was around then, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So I think they were blinded by the possibility of it and figured it'd be an easy turnaround, or at least the devices that he's buying would be collateral if that's what they're worth. But again, he goes in, he gets the loan, he walks on out. So the problem is the FDA has issue with Allen making false claims and would seize the muscle simulators. Stimulators, not simulators. So Alan will do the whole like he normally does. He's turned this to shit and decides, screw this mess. I'm going to leave it for Guy and his brother. And they decide they're going to head to Texas. And so it's just like, whatever. He just turns things to shit and then skedaddles.
Well, he
Now,
turns it to crap, dumps it on somebody else, and then takes off.
Now, the irony of this side of it is now where he does leave it to Guy does spend a whole lot of time, I guess, since he's got the electronics background, he does end up salvaging that business. Unfortunately, Alan will profit from that because obviously it was his idea, his baby. It's just somebody else worked hard to unfuck it because Alan made false claims. But we'll get to that. Now, Carrie and Sheila would hope that once Alan tasted success, he would be nicer. So they're kind of pawning off him being abusive as just being under stress with having to care for his wife and now 2 young children.
Is Carrie still living with them?
Well, she just came to visit in Hawaii. That
Mm,
she just wanted to visit her sister.
gotcha.
But unfortunately, Alan's success would not make him a nicer man. Sheila will tell girlfriends that Alan tried to drown her by putting her head in the toilet and repeatedly flushing.
Ew.
Alan would also have a habit of bringing other women into their bedroom and would deliberately leave the door open during sex. So, I mean, he would just wouldn't hide his cheating, and it just disgusting.
Wow.
And
He's a real
even
class act.
yeah, and then when they would get into arguments, he would deny that he was the children's father. Now, baby number 2, it was named Daryl. Now, they'll speculate that Alan named both his girls boy names so that he could steal their identity down the road if he had to. I don't know if that's accurate, but it seems like the way this guy operates, there's
Yeah, it
some
makes sense.
legitimacy to it.
Yeah.
Now, in September 1997, Castle Hills police respond to a 911 call. By the time they get there, Sheila is covered in bruises. Alan had beaten Sheila with a belt and promised she would never walk again and that he was really going to mess up her face. Now, Alan's probably about a foot taller than Sheila and outweighs her by about 100 pounds.
Good
So
Lord.
any efforts to protect herself were pretty bleak. So Alan beat her with this belt until it broke. Then
Oh,
he
God.
then he proceeded to hit her with a closed fist. Alan was arrested for battery. Now, Sheila was fearful for what Alan would do when he was released from jail. So she goes into hiding. And then the next morning, she loads the kids into the car and drives to Santa Rosa, California to a friend because that's the closest. No, they're in Texas during this. So you figure her parents are in Oregon. She's got a friend in California. So that's what makes her decide to drive there because that's the
Yeah.
closest place she could get out of town. Now, Alan, anticipating this, he gets on a flight and flies to California, and they almost arrive at the same time.
Oh, gosh.
So Sheila's holding her 2-year-old daughter, Daryl, when Alan runs up yelling at her. And naturally, as the yelling gets louder, they start to draw attention to the neighbors. Alan grabs Sheila by the neck and shoves her against the wall, which causes Sheila and Daryl to fall. A neighbor comes running over, and as the neighbor comes running over, Alan gets in his car to flee. Another neighbor attempts to block his way, but Alan doesn't slow down and actually hits the neighbor,
Oh, my
causing
God.
him to fall onto the hood. Fortunately, it was at a low enough speed that, I mean, the guy didn't die, but then Alan slams on his brakes, flings the man to the ground, and then speeds off. Now,
Wow.
Alan's immediately returned to jail for assault and battery, and Sheila decides to drive to Oregon, seeking safety with her sister Carrie. Now, at this point, Sheila is 23 years old, and
Still so young.
she files for divorce. Sheila wins custody, and that immediately makes Alan livid. So this is the starting point of when he starts harassing Sheila, because it's just he never likes to lose. And now not only did he lose custody, he lost his wife. None of that was on his terms, so he couldn't be more upset. In 1987, Sheila was supposed to get child support. She sues Alan for the support, but never gets any money from him that was ordered. Alan files bankruptcy and says he can barely survive, but then he'll show up to court and to Sheila's house in brand new cars, and he would brag to friends that Sheila would never benefit from any of his success.
He's,
Now,
he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a class act. Now, when Stevie turns 3, she'll say that her dad is touching her inappropriately, or, I mean, obviously that's not what a 3-year-old will say, but at some point that comes up, and she'll bring it up in court, but there are no charges because there's no evidence. So the court kind of looks at it as a mudslinging kind of thing. So I don't know if there's any foundation to that. But so that was just kind of mentioned.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's just one of those. I don't know, but
It's disgusting it's disgusting on either way. Like, if he is doing it, he's disgusting, and if she's making it up, that's
I feel like he's such a piece of shit. You don't really need to embellish his personality there. He speaks for himself. Now, as the girls start to get older, they start to notice how nice their dad's house is, how he's got the nice cars, the nice clothes. And meanwhile, Sheila's struggling. She's not getting any support payments. She's trying to work and take care of the kids. And she's got a piece of junk car. She's exhausted trying to work and take care of them. So it's a struggle for her. But then as they're starting to get older, they like what all the nice things, and their dad will buy them whatever they want to. And then he'll tell them, like when Sheila goes to discipline him, that to respond back that dad said we could move in with him if you weren't nice to us. So it puts her in the position of
having some bratty preteens.
Yes. Now in 1992, Sheila meets a man named Jamie. He's 30 years old, and he works for Pfizer and was a former Marine. A year later, they end up getting married. And also in 1993, Alan marries his 4th wife, Maureen. Now, Maureen's the first wife of Alan's that actually sets boundaries for him, and he abides by them. Now, I feel like it's because Maureen is the first wife of Alan to bring money into the marriage. So I think since she doesn't need his money, and he can definitely figure out ways to spend it, that's where I think it's a different level of respect there, because
it's a different dynamic. He needs her money.
Yes. So he doesn't pull the shenanigans that he does with, or that he had with his other wives that with Maureen. Now, not knowing this, obviously, Sheila tries to warn Maureen about Alan, but naturally ex-wives are not listened to. So Maureen,
like a scorned ex.
Yeah. So Maureen doesn't listen to Sheila. Now Sheila hopes that since they're both remarried, that the in and out of court and fighting and everything would stop. But immediately after Sheila gets married, Alan files for full custody the day before their honeymoon. So Sheila and Jamie don't get to go on their honeymoon. They have to go to court.
Oh, nice.
So it's just yet one more way Alan is just shitting on somebody else. So Alan, He didn't really want more time with the girls because when he does have them at his house, he's either gone on a business trip or he has his administrative assistant watch them so he can go play golf. So this is all just a game because Sheila wants the kids.
I mean, I hate to say this, but it's probably better off for those kids that he wasn't around them
Yeah.
since he's
I
so
mean,
abusive and crazy.
yeah, probably so. So during one of their last custody pursuits, Alan or Sheila will bring up the potential sexual abuse to Stevie, and that makes Alan withdraw from his custody suit.
Ooh,
So,
that makes it
also,
seem like it was really going on.
well, now this is I don't know if that was the motivation, but during that year, Alan partners or he's trying to partner with RS Medical to sell his muscle stimulator machine as a physical therapy tool. So I don't know if it was easier to not let that be in in the
Like,
courts during that because
yeah,
he's trying to do a deal and it wouldn't behoove him for that shit to go public during a multi-million dollar deal potentially, which that deal does go through. Alan would be a 50% partner. He'd get a yearly salary and 10% of all sales. There would be no buy-in for Alan since he's bringing the product and the idea, because without it, I mean, there's nothing. So that's where it's not costing Alan anything and he just starts raking in the money. Now,
great.
in 1995, RS Medical will make $8.7 million dollars, and then by 1996 it exceeds 17 million. So basically, Alan just making money sitting around.
I mean, that's so not fair. I
Yeah.
realize money doesn't buy happiness or blah blah blah, but come on now.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a shitty situation cuz you figure he left that in Hawaii for his dad to figure out and unfuck. So, if he hadn't have done that, Alan wouldn't have been able to go, "Hey, yeah," and then because he's a con man or like just a smooth talker, he was able to turn it into something else. Because mind you, Guy wasn't doing getting it bought by anybody. So without Guy and without Alan, it probably wouldn't have evolved to what it was. So they did work together to create something, and it's unfortunate the way that it panned out.
yeah.
Now and now before Sheila and Alan had divorced, Sheila had her tubes tied because she kind of figured Alan enough that she didn't want more kids after those two. But she
Right.
didn't anticipate meeting Jamie and she desperately wanted kids with Jamie. So they have it reversed and then do a round of IVF. And she does get pregnant with quadruplets and
Holy shit.
kind of makes them little local celebrities, which naturally pisses off Alan because he's got nothing but time and money now. And if he turns on the TV, he'll get little updates about somebody he cannot stand. So there's that. So 6 weeks prior to Sheila's murder, the Bellush family decide that they're going to move to Florida to get away from Alan. Because Alan would again, he's got nothing but time. So he would go by their house, just drive by, and he would just be constantly surveilling what they were doing. So they left Texas in the middle of the night and they told very few people of where they were going because they didn't want them to know anywhere where they were going.
That's kind of scary to feel like you got to pack up in the middle of the night and take off.
Yeah, well, Sheila knows at least a little bit of what Alan's capable of, so she's just the more distance she can put between them, the better.
Did he have visitation of his girls? Like, isn't that like some type of parental kidnapping?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I would imagine it is, but I think Sheila has full custody because when he withdrew his petition, she won full custody initially. So I know he had visitation, but I felt like when the whole potential sexual abuse came up, I don't know if him withdrawing, he decided, I don't really want to put up with them. And then, mind you, the girls are kind of turning into like the 13-year-old typical.
Bratty
Yeah,
teenagers.
I'd hate to say it, but I
Yeah, we
think
all.
so. They pack up. Stevie is specifically told not to tell Alan and go to a payphone and call Alan. Now he'll try to ask her where she's at and just pick at her like just tell me where you are. I'll come get you. And she's like, I'm not supposed to. Just wanted to call. He'll eventually get her to come clean about what color the house is. And then Alan decides to hire a PI to find out their location in Florida.
Of course.
Now, again, since Alan has nothing but free time, he does the majority of playing golf. And this is where he ends up meeting a minor criminal / golf acquaintance by the name of Daniel Roca. Now, Alan will tell Roca that Sheila's abusing the children and he needs help finding them and getting them away from her. Now, naturally, if you tell somebody's abusing your kids and can they help you, they're going to be all like, oh, that's a shitty situation. Yeah, I'll help. And that's what he does. So Roca contacts a friend who introduces him to his cousin, Jose Luis Del Toro, who agrees to attack Sheila and get the kids back for $14,000.
Which is chump change now that Alan's a nice little millionaire.
Yeah, he doesn't care. Now, November 7th, 1997, Del Toro goes to Sarasota, Florida in his grandmother's vehicle with the intention of assaulting Sheila. Now, Del Toro's a dipshit. He goes to the local sports authority to buy his camouflage. And then he also goes to the local gas station because he gets lost and can't figure out where the address is. Now, this is a close-knit town, so everybody's kind of suspicious of this weirdo waltzing around in camouflage, and he's remembered by everybody. Now, he pulls into the neighborhood, and it's suspicious to the neighborhood or one of the neighbors. So that neighbor decides to memorize both the vehicle and the license plate, which is what later leads to dipshit's arrest.
I mean, it's sometimes good to have nosy neighbors.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, they don't call the police. They're just like suspicious of, again, and a random car showing up to park in the middle of the day.
Right.
So Del Toro breaks in to the home while Sheila and the quadruplets are home. Now he watches her for a little bit as she takes care of the quadruplets. Now they're almost 2 years old. So, I mean, I imagine that's a lot to keep up with. They also they've got an in-ground pool. So Sheila has the babies in life vests because she will tell people that she's always afraid of them running around or getting outside and then falling in the pool while she's changing one of the other babies. So it's not abnormal for them just to be running around in life vests. They do use the pool, but it's just like that's one reason why they're kind of waddling around in their life vests.
It's kind of cute though.
Yeah,
It's just extra careful. That's not abusive.
Yeah. So Del Toro watches how diligent she is with the kids and then realizes that this does not look like somebody who just abuses their kids. I think he broke in expecting to be like the hero and save the children. Although the weird thing out of this is it's not the right children. To me, like when I was reading it, it's just like, right, but those aren't Alan's kids. So if this moron was going to kill her and then take the babies, that kind of looking at teenagers here, guy. But so he decides that he's not going to go through with it. But when Sheila gets up, she notices the front door is open. And then she looks over and sees Del Toro. This genius panics and thinks since he can't run, it's the fight or flight kind of mode, I guess, kicks in. And he panics and shoots Sheila in the face with his .45 caliber gun.
Oh my gosh.
Now she tries to get to the phone in the kitchen and he
After being
grabs
shot in
her.
the face?
Yes. So,
Holy shit.
um, meanwhile, one of the babies is like clinging to her leg.
Oh,
So she tries to go for the phone, which is, I mean, cell phones aren't around necessarily right then and here. So she's trying to grab the kitchen phone that's on the wall, those long cord things that,
yeah.
so
Like
she's
we have
trying to grab,
downstairs.
yeah, she tries to grab that. It does get knocked off the hook, but he grabs a kitchen knife and slits her throat.
Holy crap.
Now, this is kind of in the later morning. Stevie and Daryl are at school, Jamie's at work. So it's going to be 6 hours before Stevie comes home and walks in to find her siblings covered in blood, little footprints all over the house, and they're just wearing their life vests. And her mom was so good at taking care of the babies that they hardly ever cried. So just the fact that they're waddling around crying and clearly distraught was just like, something's not right. So Stevie goes looking for her mom, and then she thought at first when she saw her on the floor, she thought it was a pile of clothes, but just because she's just crumpled on the floor and blood was covering the floor, smeared on the cabinets, sprayed because he slit her neck. So she almost isn't taking in what she's seeing, and thinks that she's playing a joke on her when she bends down to see if she's okay.
My God.
Yeah, it's a really sad. You can listen to the 911 phone call
No, thank
of
you.
of just hearing her call 911 because I mean her mom's dead. So it breaks my heart that she was the one to find her mother like that. I know she will never forget that. I mean, how could you?
And she's going to feel slightly responsible when she finds out it was her dad responsible for it because she's the one that told her dad where.
Now, she does later tell police that she thinks that her dad did it because he hated her mom, and he would say plenty of times when he wanted her dead. So, there, I mean, obviously the police are gonna investigate that lead. And now, mind you, during this, Del Toro flees to Mexico after he kills Sheila, but he is extradited July 1999 and pleads guilty to first degree murder and armed burglary in 2000. Now, he receives 2 life sentences. Roca opts for a trial. Now, that's the guy who introduced everybody. So he gets sentenced to life in prison for first degree murder because without him, nobody would have met each other. So it makes me glad all these people were chipped together, and they're
Yeah.
also not kingpins because they all turned on each other.
Yeah.
Now, Allen was sentenced to 2 life sentences without parole. His
Why
charges,
two?
I don't know.
Like I could see the one because they
So,
resulted in her murder, but I don't understand because wouldn't that be like a second charge to get
so
a
his
double life sentence?
charges, he got 2 life sentences without parole, and he got federally charged for interstate conspiracy to commit murder and then interstate domestic violence. So
Gotcha.
those are the 2, even though I mean I didn't know that those you can get life sentences, but that's what he got.
Good.
Now, in 2001, Allen's nearly killed in a prison gang attack, and after that, he's segregated from the rest of the prison population. And then in November 2014, Allen dies in prison at the age of 59, which I would have preferred him live a lot longer in prison because he couldn't manipulate his way out of that.
What did
But
he die from?
they don't say. So I don't know if it's another one of these. He gets beaten to death because I feel like since he's a con man and can't do that shit in prison, I feel like he did not have friends in there. So that was what my guess would be, but you can't find what he died from.
Interesting.
Yes. But that's now where the murder of Sheila Bullish was quick and short and disgusting, and breaks my heart that those 4 babies will grow up without their loving mother. There was a lot behind it, and of just Alan being a piece of shit.
What was the guy's name that did the murder?
Del Toro.
Yeah. So I 100% think of Emperor's New Groove, not to make it funny, because it's not. But what's his name? Kronk? He's like,
that's who you pictured?
yeah, doing like his own theme music and like sneaking around in broad daylight.
Well, so I can kind of understand him not being the brightest individual. And then he panicked, but I don't know why in his little beady bird brain that he didn't just continue with the whole beat the shit out of Sheila and then skedaddle.
Or bare minimum, just act like he was there. Like breaking and entering has got to be way less of a charge than
murder,
than even assault or murder.
Well,
So
and the
to
thing
just
of
walk in the house and then be like, oh shit, sorry, wrong house, and then take off, he
Right?
probably could have gotten off scot-free.
Yeah, and the fact that he tells police he watched her take care of the kids,
Yeah, that's creepy.
and then knew from then that she was not abusing the children. She was a good mom. Is like,
Well,
what
why the
the?
hell would you kill her?
It just, I think, gotta hawk this up to sometimes the world and its cruelty does not make any fucking sense.
I couldn't say that any better.
But I mean, the silver lining, I guess, is that at least Sheila was able to know some sort of happiness with Jamie and having kids with Jamie. As brief as it was, at least she didn't die at the hands of Alan and just having a miserable fucking life.
It's true. Well, thanks for that, Claire.
Yeah, that's all I got.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.